My condolences. Oh, this must be from the house. Okay, that explains some stuff. The studio is unfortunately not in a suitable state for recording, and I do not know when it will be. I hope you have been doing well on your own, and included with this letter is a chest. Inside the chest is a little microphone. Enjoy! Oh. Nice. It is once again time. This microphone's kind of neat. And what I'm going to be building today is the Guardian Sword from Legends of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, I've tried making this sword a few times in the past before, but each rendition has had either some flaw or inconsistency that I wasn't really a big fan of. So hopefully building out of cardboard today will yield maybe a different result that I like more. I will be using a few different tools for this one as well, aside from just your regular box cutter, ruler, and pencil. What I'm going to be using as well is I'm going to be using one of these tools, which has triangles, squares, hexagons, and circles on it in varying sizes. These will hopefully help me get a few of the odd details on it. I'm also going to be using a compass for some of the bigger circles that I probably can't get with this tool. And since this is a sword, I will, of course, be using meat skewers as the center core for it to keep it nice and rigid. This is cardboard after all. There aren't a whole lot of references on the internet to the Guardian Sword. At least there weren't a whole lot when I looked. There are a lot of references for the Guardian Sword Plus Plus version though, but that's not really one I want to build today. The Guardian Sword Plus and Plus Plus versions are a little more complex than I'm looking to do today, and the Guardian Sword is a nice and simple shape. I'll work on those two maybe another time. But what I did manage to find was a drawing that I had traced out, and I will be using this as sort of a template for making my sword. Now, I think I'll only use the blade portion of this, because I think that's what looks the best. But we do in fact have Breath of the Wild for the Switch, and I will be using that as a reference for some parts of the sword as well. And now that I've gotten all that out of the way, it's time to start building. So I've got with me a sheet of cardboard that I will be trimming to the right shape, then I will be tracing the design of the sword blade onto it, cutting it out, and maybe tracing out a handle when I have the Switch on hand. Maybe, I don't know. I'll try and find a picture online, maybe there's something new from last time I checked. But let's just get started with this. I think what I'll do is maybe a 4-inch wide piece of cardboard that I will eventually put the pattern on and cut out from there. Alright, I now have my piece of cardboard cut out to length, and very much like my Nausicaa sword that I built recently, I think I'm going to keep this just as the length it is, just in case my sword is either this exact length, a bit shorter, and if it's a bit longer, I'll just have to trim some stuff and make it so it'll fit. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of paper that I have, trace out the blade design on top of here, and then I might just skip any of the detail from the handle portion and just skip straight to cutting it out. I now have the Guardian Sword cut out. I decided to go with the blade and the handle. But this is so far only one piece, but using the power of duplication, I can get multiple pieces. And now that I have these multiple pieces, I also need multiple handle pieces, which I actually already went and cut out. I know I didn't do a whole lot as to how I had made these, like the details that go into them, but I just didn't feel like doing it. If you think this video is kind of all over the place, I share that sentiment. I kind of have almost no clue what I'm doing. But I guess for now, something I can show you though is now that I have my brother's Switch with me, I can go into the game Breath of the Wild and find the other two swords, the Guardian Sword Plus and the Guardian Sword Plus Plus. They look slightly different, but the handles are actually relatively the same. So I cut out a piece of cardboard that I'm going to use to trace on a handle and extend it a little bit, like in game. And this is where I make my first mistake. Everything gets noticeably quieter, and that's because I forgot to put my microphone back on, which was why things may sound distant. So I ended up spending a little bit too much time looking for a Guardian Sword Plus, because I guess I just didn't have one on hand. In doing so, it got a little bit too dark in the room. I didn't feel like changing the lighting at all, because that'd kind of go against the continuity of the video, but it went whatever. And turn them on. I guess I'm just not really feeling it for this video. By the way, I've now got the Guardian Sword. It is on display on the Switch right here. I'm just going to take one of these handles and one of these pieces of cardboard and trace it out into however I think it should look. This will help me when I decide to make things in the future. Like if I ever decide to make the Guardian Sword Plus or Plus Plus, having this on hand will be helpful because I then do not need to retrace out this, which was a little annoying, and I'll have a template that I can just stack and cut out later, which will, again, make things very easy. The only really significant part to this Guardian Sword Plus, though, is it's only got this little extended area here. And the same thing applies to the Guardian Sword Plus Plus. They're virtually identical, which I thought was interesting, but it also makes it easier for me. The only difference is really the blades. So let's get started, shall we? So I've now got the main handle traced out. I kind of hope you can see that. I do not believe there are any gaps, and if so, they're probably only going to be very small gaps I can trace with just my pencil and won't need the handle anymore to trace the rest of the design out. Now let's move on to the extra bit, which will be interesting when making the Guardian Sword Plus and Plus Plus version, because what this Guardian Sword has been so far is it's essentially been stacking layers. So here's the Guardian Sword template I have right now, and what I'm going to need to do later is stack all of the pieces on top of it. The little extra bit needs to be cut out here, as well as a rounded bit right at the handle, and then this whole thing can be glued together. But another thing that goes on top of that is this weird worm bit and this cover piece right here. Again, more stacking, including this area, which basically just gets some concentric rings. However, with the Guardian Sword Plus Plus that I'm about to trace out, it almost has this lowered layer, which is going to appear right here and a little bit over here, which I'm not sure how I'll do that in the future, but I'll find out how. Let's finish up tracing this out, though. I think that just about does it. There's really not much that changes between swords, as I just mentioned. It's just a little extension. I might extend it just a little bit more, though. I do not quite know yet. That wraps it up for this. Let's get to some assembly and extra details on the original sword. I've now got almost all of the pieces to my Guardian Sword ready to assemble. There's just a few little details left that need to be completed. Much like some of the ones I've drawn onto here. Whoops! Much like some of the ones I've drawn onto here. This needs to be cut out, and this section also needs to be cut out. And that needs to be cut out on both pieces. I will soon be doing that, and I also need to add some extra details, like this little worm squiggle thing. I need to flip that and trace another one, as well as this extra little box thing. that kind of just curves around the handle of the sword, and after that I may just stop. As I've mentioned before, I'm not really feeling as into this build as I have with some others. I will probably add some extra details like the lines that the Guardian Swords stereotypically have to kind of represent these separated pieces, but then that might just be it. I don't know, I'll get around to something at some point. But first, I gotta work on another one of these. Here we are, using the tool that I was talking about. I'm going to be using this to make some of the circles that you see here. They're all the same size, so that kind of makes things easy. Easier. I've now got both pieces cut out, and what I'll do is I'll work on that fold-over flap that I was talking about earlier, and then I'll probably stick the skewers into the sword, glue everything together, and that will be that. Should probably cut this out first, though. After a little bit of fiddling around and tweaking some of the parts I have here, I think I'm now ready for final assembly. And what I'm going to be doing is, as usual, the meat skewers inside of the blade, or popsicle sticks, to keep it rigid. I'm not too sure if I'll go with both blades or one. I think I might just go with one for the sake of simplicity. And if I'm going to have problems like I did with the Nausicaa sword last time, I've got myself this nifty, handy-dandy little tool with me. And it's got this really cool hammer on the end of it. If it comes to it, I will try and hammer in these meat skewers just to go inside the cardboard. I know they have given me trouble in the past. They might just give me some trouble now. But in the meantime, I think I'm just going to speed through getting all the parts together. And to sum it up, I've cut apart the tops of the handles so they can just be glued right on top in their respective areas, sort of like a puzzle. I've also chopped off the handles, as well as the little bit right here. I'm not sure why that's chopped off in game, or removed in game, but it is. I also cut out little snake doodads that go on top of it. Kind of just like that. I'm just going to eyeball everything when placing it together, but it should come out relatively well, and that'll probably be it for this video. I'll work on some other details another time. So yeah, as you might be able to tell, it did give me a little bit of trouble, and I had to use the hammer. But they're in, and I'll go in with some more meat skewers later just to push them in a little bit more so they line up nicely. But for now, I think I'm just going to glue these two blade pieces together, which should be simple since I've had my glue gun heating up for a bit. Just gotta be careful not to burn myself. Blades are now glued together. Now I'll just add all the rest of the details. And I already messed up a little bit. I'm not supposed to put glue there. I think my thought process was I was gluing on a full handle. I forgot about the little cutout there. Nope, I was wrong. I'll have to keep that in mind for next time, though. Whoops! Alright, I now have all of these little main handle pieces glued on, and I can already tell you, it is not very comfy to hold. I think it's just too square, and this ridge right here is a little uncomfortable. So now that I've finished up this bit of the handle, I'm going ahead and add this piece, which I've made symmetrical in a way so it can fold over top, just like that. Now I'll glue it in place as best that I can. I don't know if it's perfect, but I gotta work with what I've got. Ta-da! This is it. This is essentially the completed sword. There's not much more I want to do with this. Sure, there may be a few details and things I can fix up here and there, but I may just leave this as is, because I'm pretty satisfied with how it came out so far. I've got the same form factor to my handle as the one in game, minus 2 details right here and maybe some of the rest of the constellations that are on the sword, but those I can paint in later. The blade needs some detail work, but that's something I think I'll just do with a Sharpie. This needs to be cut out, but that's easy enough to do. I think that's it, really. There's not much more I can talk about with this. I've finished up the sword, I've traced out other things, so I guess that's it. See ya.